All right.
Nice guy.
Super nice guy.
Lovely studio.
Yeah, he's got a great studio. He's super nice. I haven't gotten to the point where I'm like going over there frequently. I do go over there every now and again, working on equipment. Like he mentioned, his speakers. He bought them ATCs. I can't remember what number they are, but he bought them from a TV studio in Canada, and went and got them. One of them was non-functional. The other one was functional, but it needed a recap because they were pretty, they were older. They were pushing 15 years old. Not many people want to touch that. And ATC, I think they have a US repair facility, but mostly you have to send the stuff back to the UK, which is just prohibitively expensive. So I ended up emailing them, and they said, sure, we'll supply you with all the schematics you need. You just need to sign an NDA. So I did. And
brilliant. Wow.
So now I am a ATC
Pro
certified repair.
Certified repair.
But anyway, yeah, Jim is a super nice guy.
Yeah,
He's a lot of fun to hang around, and we'll be going to NAMM actually.
Okay.
Next week is NAMM. Obviously, for the people that are hearing this, NAMM has already happened. But Jim and I and Dan Millis, another friend of ours, will be going, and we're gonna
have some fun,
learn as much as we can, and speak with as many people as we can. It's gonna be great.
Have some fun, sunshine in California.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so let's get into today's topic. So today's topic is producing a song or mixing a song. So Ben, Neil, when somebody says, hey, I'd like you to produce this song, what does that mean to you?
Means I'm in a world of trouble.
Okay. Okay.
It means to me that like you're taking it from beginning to end. Like if you're producing a song, like even if you're not the mix engineer, but like you want to see it to finish. That's when somebody says, "Hey, produce a song for me." Like, okay, so what do we need to get started? What do we need? Who do we need to? What instrumentation? Who do we need to get? And what do we need to do to make this song go from in your head to on the two bus? Done.
Okay. Great. And then what about mixing a song? Is mixing purely balancing the tracks you were given, or are you making production decisions when you're mixing a song?
That's a really good question.
That is a good question.
That is a good question, because I think there'll be a lot of different answers to that.
Because I feel like if you're producing it with the mix in mind already. And so there you're doing a little bit of mixing while you're producing maybe, and recording. But if you're just hired as just a mix engineer, I don't feel like you have the liberty to say, okay, I'm going to cut this chorus and make it at the end. Or I'm going to take this whole bridge section out and put it in after the first chorus instead of the second chorus. You know what I'm saying? So like, I feel like as a mix,
yeah.
Now,
you could probably decide to do the bridge though with a high pass filter on it. Take all the low end out. Make it that probably sits under.
Sure,
mix
you could do an extreme effect, like say panning everything to one side and doing some, and that's sort of a production decision, but also it could be just a really creative mix decision.
We should probably ask someone who actually knows.
Well, yeah. So today we're going to talk about the overlapping lines of mixing and production, or is it the clearly defined boundaries between mixing and production?
Hi, and welcome to Sound Discussion. Each episode, we discuss a music topic which we have all had first-hand experience with. These will be anything from getting started, recording, playing live, mixing, mastering, and everything in between. Most episodes, we will have a special guest to bring their professional experience to the discussion. So, let's get started.
Jim Stewart is a Cleveland-based mixing engineer and producer with over 15 years of experience in the music industry. Throughout his career, he has collaborated with a diverse range of local, regional, and national artists. Jim's expertise spans multiple genres, including rock, soul, and Americana. Some of his mixing credits include Welshly Arms, The Happy Fits, Ray Flanagan, and Ohio Sky, as well as a song by Jim Sonfeld titled Sitting in the Green Grass, which was produced by Lee Turner, episode 3, mixed by Jim, this episode, and mastered by Dan Millis, whom we will have in an upcoming episode. You can also hear Jim featured on some other podcasts, such as Recording Studio Rockstars, episode 164, and the Six Figure Home Studio podcast. Jim, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome
looking
to
forward
have
to
you
this.
here. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
No problem.
So, what does production and mixing mean to you? When someone says, hey, Jim, I want you to mix this song, do they also mean production? Or when someone says, can you produce a song for me? Do they want you to mix it too? Where is that line when you're working on a song, when you're mixing something, or when you're producing something?
I mean, that's a conversation to be had, especially if there's a less experienced artist who hasn't done this before. I think the conversation of like, what are all these steps? Where's the, where do we need to have different collaborators? Where do we need to do this stuff? That's that conversation. If someone's coming to me and saying they want something mixed, and I go, cool, and they tell me what they have and they tell me they have X and they want Y, that's when we have a conversation. Go, okay, well, you're talking about additional production or whatever. Most people, kind of understand what the differences are and kind of what happens. If I'm producing something that I'm also mixing, that line gets even blurrier because I'm kind of doing things as I go. I'm already building in, I know that I'm going to want to do this later on, so I'm just going to do it now while we're recording or while we're tracking, or at some point during the process, I'm going to just add that in and it's going to be part of the production from here on out, this mix decision. Maybe there's a delay throw on a vocal that every time we play back the verse, I hear it, so I'm just going to do it real quick and it'll be part of the, the rough mix from here on out, and it's just the thing. So that line definitely gets blurrier if I'm the one involved in both aspects. But I think if there's, an artist coming to me specifically for mixing, then we definitely have that conversation about, are you guys looking for your tracks to be polished, put together, and kind of made cohesive? And are you open to, if I hear a tambourine on the chorus, if I hear, this crazy filter thing that goes into the, the bridge and makes it sound like it's underwater, are you guys open to that stuff, or do you want your tracks better? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So if you're mixing something and your brain says, hey, this tonal color might sound really cool here, is that a production decision or is that a mixing decision?
A tonal thing is, for me, it's a mixing decision. That's trying to find the space for something and just, or just saying, hey, this sound will make this part speak a little bit more or whatever. That kind of stuff I feel like is inherent mixing process. A production decision would be to completely add, remove, change an element of the song or an arrangement of the song. That's more of the production world as far as I'm concerned.
Interesting. So do you think, in your experience, do you find that clients are quite open to those constructive and sort of judgmental decisions on, the tone of, shaping the tone of the guitar going into the chorus or that sort of thing as part of the mixing process? Is that what they're looking for?
I think most of the time, I mean, I've never really gotten pushback if I EQ something away. Some people might have a comment about the guitar sounding, maybe they're a little bit too bitey in this part, but it's not a matter of like, I can't believe you changed our guitar tone in this thing. It's like, I'm finding a space for things. Even adding things, I've really not gotten much pushback before. Especially if I have that conversation with the artist beforehand and just say like, just so you know, anything I do, whether it be a mixing decision or if I think there's something that could be added to this song, is only to make what I think, to make your song better, to make people engage more, to make the listener more interested. My only concern is to give you the best version of your song. I'm not trying to get more credit. I'm not trying to like get some kind of like pat on the back because I added a cool tambourine to your song. I just think this will make your already good chorus even better or whatever. So that's my approach, and that's kind of the conversation we have. So if I do something, I don't think people are ever like, well, he's changing our thing and he's going to try to take over and get a producer credit and, now we got to pay him like a royalty or whatever. That's never happened to me. So that kind of stuff. I just don't think people really worry about too much.
Interesting.
So when okay, so here's an example where I kind of ran into this line. I was doing a mix contest, and the artist was sort of part of the judging panel, if you will.
Okay.
And I thought my mix was really damn good, and so did a lot of people. But I ended up reamping a lot of guitars, not through actual amps, but just like through software amps and speaker emulations, because I did not feel that the tone of the electric guitars were right for the song.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, that feels like a production decision. I didn't think that it was, but at the end of the contest, the artist had messaged me and said, I really like your mix, but it feels more like a remix because it wasn't the guitars that I gave you.
Yeah.
So, that's cool. And it was for fun, right? So, no harm, no foul. But when you're in a real world situation and you have guitars or drums, drum sampling, and you have a decision to make as to whether, okay, how much EQ can I apply to this guitar tone to correct an issue or to boost something that's missing or lacking or whatever, versus, well, I could just send it through the speaker emulation and give it a whole new sound.
Yeah.
And then go from there, right? So is that a production decision, or with sampling drums, adding in snare? I know you do a lot of sampling, Jim,
Yeah, sure.
in your work. So is that a production decision, or is that just a higher level mixing decision that is made?
I mean, I guess there's an argument for either to be made for that's production. I mean, that's the kind of thing that should have happened during the production process, getting good guitar tones, getting good drum. But that's not always possible with people, especially people are self-recording in bedrooms and doing all this other stuff that they don't have the capacity. They don't have a place nearby where they can record killer drums, or they don't have a good guitar amp or whatever. So, I mean, I think it's the job of the mixer to deliver what the artist wants. And if that is a larger than life drum sound, a larger than recorded drum sound, they were in their bedroom and they recorded it with 3 mics and they want it to sound like Bonham in a stairwell, then you got to figure out a way to do that.
Right.
It does get tricky when other decisions are made without that sonic thing happening already. If you want this massive, roomy, modern, whatever drum sound thing, and those aren't the drums that the bass has been recorded to or the guitars have been recorded to, it makes the puzzle trickier to put together. If you're not basing your decisions on what the foundation was, then it's trickier. But I mean, there's a lot of ways you can kind of fudge things and get the thing that, people really are looking for with their tracks. Sometimes you're lucky and you get these tracks in, and it's just like, oh yeah, the road is exactly clear where I need to go. It's all laid out there. They made all the decisions. Everything was really thought out and planned, and the puzzle just goes together. All they need from me is to maximize everything and make it feel better. I don't need to make it happen. It's already happening. I just need to enhance the stuff that's there and push the stuff. But that's not always the case.
Okay, so I like the way you said that, because sometimes you get a song to mix, and halfway through the mixing process, I feel like Sisyphus pushing that rock up a hill. Yeah. And I'm like, is this supposed to be this difficult? Am I just a bad mixer? Or what is it? Like maybe they're not the greatest tracks, but this is really difficult. And there's other times where you get a set of tracks and you're just like, faders up, easy breezy.
Yep.
What is that?
I mean, that's why I think all of us do this thing, is for those kind of moments where you get that little bit of lightning and it's just like, oh, that feels great. Why can't it always feel like that? Why can't it always be this thing where it's just like the drummer and the bass player are totally locked. The guitar tones are great. The guy's playing appropriate parts. There's no stepping on the vocal. The singer's incredible. They know how to do, they've got great dynamic control. They've got air on top of it. Like, it's just all this stuff just comes together and you just go, yep, great. It's not always that thing. I mean, part of the beauty of and like dark side of this accessible recording technology, the fact that anyone can grab an Apollo and a microphone and do a thing, is that it makes it accessible to way more people, good and bad,
But,
so like,
but still you need the skills to use
exactly
the material. You need the skills to use the mic and
Well,
just real quick, your studio looks amazing from
thank you.
from the picture. And I wanted to ask you how you got into mixing. I feel like we've like how tell us about yourself, because we haven't done that.
Let's do a hard break right here. I'm gonna cut here. I did realize
You're gonna
that I jumped right into the content.
I don't think we should cut. I think we should go right back.
I think we should just leave in the fact that Nate just dives straight in.
Nate
And
forgot to ask.
I forgot to ask like how you got your start and all of this stuff, because I'm so focused on like getting you in and out.
He's so
Jim.
excited about going right in there.
And Nate, we know each other, so you might have a little more
we know each
background,
other, so I feel like I kind of I involuntarily or didn't mean to skip over that. So let's take a step back, Jim. Tell us about how you got started in mixing. Because where you're sitting is a beautiful studio, but it's not your first studio. So where did you start, and how did you start?
I get into this in way more detail probably on the Lid Shaw, the Recording Studio Rockstars podcast. If you want to get like really into it, but which we'll
put a link to in our show notes.
Yeah, the short story is basically I was grew up in a music. My dad was the biggest music fan ever, but he was not a musical person. He doesn't perform anything, but he just always had music on. And one of my earliest music memories is watching The Last Waltz with him, and him pointing out like, here's the, like, check out who's on the whatever, and watch when Eric Clapton's guitar strap pops off. And like, just, he was such a big music fan. He knew all the parts and like everything that come in. So I got into music. I started playing guitar in high school and joined a pretty rough band. We were not great, but we played shows and we recorded and we did the thing. And we went to a studio, which was, same hourly rate as most people are charging now. This was in, 2003, 2004. And just got a terrible product, absolutely awful product, and because the engineer was taking smoke breaks and just like didn't care. And I was like, man, there's got to be a way you can learn how to do this and figure out. So I looked into that. I started going to the local community college for some like prerequisite stuff, and then ended up going to the recording workshop in Chillicothe, Ohio, which is it's basically a trade school for audio engineering. I went there in 2005. It's a 5-week program with 3 additional weeks that you can like tack on to the end to kind of get a little bit more robust in certain areas. So I did that, and then immediately started looking for internships and assistant jobs or whatever. And I found a studio in town and started interning there in January of 2006, and just kind of like got right into it. The studio was great, and the guys who ran it were great, but it wasn't they weren't really keeping up with stuff, and kind of wasn't. The industry at that point, this was 2006, was really changing. Everybody was getting Pro Tools, budgets were getting smaller. All this just Napster had just gotten shut down, but like streaming was on the forefront, and like stuff was changing, and they weren't really ahead of that. So it lasted a couple years, but eventually that place shut down, and I started freelancing at another studio that I eventually was hired at. Same kind of thing. That was a different version of the same thing, but that studio kind of just got a little bit too grand for the area. Wanted it like a multi-room facility with an SSL in one room and an even the other room, and great mic locker and all this stuff. And it's just like people weren't clamoring for that in Cleveland, Ohio. So that studio shut down. And then I spent the next few years, I kind of just scraped together a decent rig and was making records wherever I could for a number of years. I had a setup in my apartment, so people would come over and track vocals and overdubs in my living room, and we would go and cut drums at whatever studio I could get into in town. There were still a few left that had good tracking spaces and all the big stuff that you needed, so I did that for a while. And then I did a record with a band that got signed to a small label, and the owner of the label approached me and said, hey, we really love this record, but we want to get our guy to mix it because he's got a name and we think it would help kind of push the thing out there. I went and met him, this guy, his name was Jim Stewart, He was an LA guy for a long time. He kind of wound up in Cleveland through some circumstances and had a studio. So I met with him and he's like, hey man, these tracks sound great. You should come work here. And so him and his business partner approached me about building a room there. So that was my studio they had basically the top floor of this old warehouse, like old building. And they just gave me the corner of it, and so I had this little front corner, and we could share a drum space, and I was starting to acquire more and more gear and getting, more and more clients and everything, and it was great. And as I was building the room, I was on a ladder. I screwed in the last piece of drywall to physically make it an enclosed room, and my phone rang, and it was the landlord saying, hey, how's it going? I'm like, great. It's a room. It's officially a room. He goes, cool, the building's sold. We got to talk. Yeah. So that was the start of my first room. It ended up being kind of like an okay thing. We had a lease. They couldn't just kick us out. The owners could not, break our lease. So what they did was they kind of did a buyout of our lease. They owned another building. They really wanted the space that we were in. But they owned another building down the way that was a little bit less desirable for them, but it had ample space. So they rebuilt us down the street. And so about a year after doing that first space that, got sold, we opened up, we all moved down the street and moved in the other space. And now I was there for a few years. And it was during that time that I kind of felt like mixing is the thing that I like to do. And that's kind of where, my sensibilities are, where I kind of my focus, ends up being the most. I don't love sitting through overdubs. I don't like coaching a singer through 10 takes of vocals. I like being presented with a thing and then going, cool, now I can do my moves and make the thing. So it was during there that sort of, kind of realization happened. Also, COVID happened. I'm not sure if you guys heard about that. Did it happen for everybody?
No, I don't know. What is that? I don't know.
Just a Cleveland thing.
Yeah.
It's Cleveland.
That happened around this time, during that too. So I ended up sustaining during COVID by just mixing stuff. And I took a rig home and had it in a spare office at the house. And I was like, okay, this can work. I can be just a mixer, it seems. And so that's where I kind of started putting my focus towards, that's when I started looking for the room that I was in at this new space was fine, but it was basically just like a gray box. It was kind of weirdly shaped. I couldn't really do anything more with it than what was done. The door was directly in the corner. There was a pillar in the other corner. There was no way to get any kind of symmetry or proper placement on acoustic panels and everything. So I looked for a space, and as it happened, a room opened up in a space nearby. The room I'm in has always been a music space. 20 years ago, it was a full-on studio with an SSL right where I'm sitting and all this stuff, and then it kind of was a hip-hop place for a little while. Most recently, it was a mastering engineer that I do a lot of work with. So this space was built to be a music room. But I did everything that you guys can see. I consulted with a designer. I had plans drawn up. I built everything. My wife and I came down here every weekend, and she put together acoustic panels and figured out the best way to tape these things shut that are these limp bag membrane traps that are a pain in the ass, but they the space trapping. So we did the whole thing, did the diffuser, did all this stuff, and have been mixing in here for 3 years now, something like that.
I was going to say, I like the bamboo. Jeez. Is that bamboo behind you?
No, it's honestly, it's just straight up Home Depot bullshit pine that I stained. It
looks great.
It does.
Probably the most time I spent on this studio was sitting at Home Depot and just holding up boards like this to make sure they weren't, bowing in the middle or knots are kicking out or whatever, and just finding the straightest pieces I could. And then I ripped them all down and made these diffusers. It's all planned. I have blueprints for everything. The guy who did it really gave me very serious plans. So
looks amazing. And 3 years later, you nothing you'd want to change going back?
Well, I'm
happy with how it's.
I'm really happy with the room. I've changed a few things as we were going. So when I moved in here, I was on a pair of Focal Twin Sixes, and I was on those speakers for 9 years. And then I switched speakers and got into a car accident around the same time. So all my references were gone. The car that I had listened to all my mixes in for years, gone. The speakers that I had known for years, gone. So it was definitely just getting upended. My brain had learned those speakers for such a long time. And the other thing I realized too was I've never mixed in a proper room prior to this. I've never mixed in a room that was acoustically treated, that had a relatively flat frequency response, that had all these things. And my brain was just like weirded out at first. Like the same, spot on my monitor controller felt way quieter because of how much absorption is in the room. Like all these things that I wasn't expecting to happen happened. So it was definitely some time acclimating for sure. But I've had these ATCs, which Nate helped tech on actually. He did a lot of the work to get them back up and running. I've had them in here for over a year now, and it's feeling really, really good now. So
I can't imagine relearning.
It's great to be
speakers.
part of your. Oh, sorry, Ben. Go ahead, man.
I was going to say I can't imagine relearning speakers.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that sounds like learning speakers sounds like such a weird, nerdy thing to do.
No,
but,
totally.
You know,
But
we've talked about it before.
Yeah. I dread learning speakers. I have a pair of speakers that I really like, and they sound really good. And at some point, I'd like to upgrade them, but I don't want to. I don't want to do that either. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's that thing, man, and it's like this room was trying to scratch that itch of like, I like my mixes, but there's something more, and this room was part of that. And then I'm like, oh, I like my mixes, but there's something more, and the speakers were part of that. And now I'm like, ooh, I like my mixes, but it's just a matter of like really I mean, I had a decade on those other ones. I just got to get those kind of like reps going to really feel it. But I have I've got a Stream Deck right here, and I've got a button that just, when I come in the morning, I hit that button, it shuffles my reference playlist. So like, as I'm dropping my stuff off and getting, breakfast or whatever, I hit that button. It plays a bunch of like 20 songs that I know really well. And I drill that into my brain when I'm here just sitting, passively listening, and just try to get really, really used to what everything sounds like.
That's a really good idea. And we've touched upon that in the past.
Yeah, we
in the general sense,
didn't we? Spoke to Sarah about that whole
in the
reference
general
track.
sense of just putting in time, listening to music on your speakers that you're going to mix on.
Totally.
Right? That is critical. But I like what you do in just passively doing other things and having music playing, because you're not in one spot when you're doing that, right? You're going to be in the back corner of the room addressing something, and then on another walking in and out. So you're almost purposefully listening to music in the worst places you possibly could, so you kind of get a feel for what music sounds like, not only in your mixing position, but as you move about the room, as someone else might be in the room when they're listening to something.
Because it probably doesn't look it in the thing, but I'm in a fairly small room. I mean, Nate's been in here, and I mean, I'm 5'6", and if I were any taller, I'd be hitting this cloud here. So it's not a very big space. So the sweet spot is pretty small. I've even, when if clients do want to come in and listen to their final mix in here, I'll hit play, give them the chair, and I'll sit right here. And I'm like, whoa, that's different. It's like, it's different enough here than, it's a smaller room. So it's kind of the nature of it. But I mean, just really kind of drilling in, what good mixes sound like into my brain over and over again is a thing. And if we want to get really nerdy, I, using the iOS Shortcuts app on my iPhone, I made a little thing where if I tap the back of my phone 3 times while I'm listening to a song in the car or whatever, it'll just add it to my reference playlist. So like, I don't have to worry about like, oh, that was a good song, and like writing it down and then adding it later. I can just, while I'm driving, just do a quick little thing like, it's a great song. It's a really good mix. I like the way the low end is or whatever. I'm going to throw it in my reference thing. And then the next day I come in and it's part of my, my cycle thing there. So
that's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's a really nice idea. I'm gonna steal that.
I'm happy.
Yeah, that's really nice. So, do you, given that your room's relatively small? I mean, it doesn't look small, by the way. It looks like you're in a massive room. Do you? And I asked this sort of with a leading question. Do you, when you're mixing, do you mix at low volume, or do you like to feel what's going on as well? Because I think there's a real misconception, but I want to hear your response, really.
More and more I'm mixing quieter and quieter. Like I said, these speakers are, I know they're not, but they still feel kind of new to me, but the detail is insane. So I feel like I can get away with being quieter and really just like getting everything I need. The only drawback is the subwoofers I use have an auto off feature if the threshold is not met for a certain amount of time. So I have to start the morning with a little bit of level to get them on, and then I can turn back down. But if I stay down for too long, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, there goes the low end, and I got to turn them back up and then do this whole thing again. It's really annoying, and I'm looking at other options, but
My Cali speakers had exactly the same thing until I found on the internet you take the back cover off and you just you unplug the thing, turn it round and plug it in, and now they're on forever.
That's fantastic.
Really?
That's the greatest thing. That's 4 years of my life going, they've turned off, and now they never turn off. Absolutely.
Nate has been researching this issue for me, and we both are like, there's no way to do it. There's no way to do it. So
I'm coming up empty,
I don't have subs in my
I haven't got subs
small
either,
studios,
okay.
so I don't have that problem.
I never had subs until I got into this room, and because again it's a small room, I was experiencing some kind of nerdy room issues that Jake Fader, who was just on, talks about it a lot. The floor ceiling bounce, every room has it depending on how bad it affects you and where it is. Mine was pretty significant in like the low mid area, so like between 100 and 150 I had a significant dip. And he told me this thing about if you integrate subs and do this whole, and it totally just like brought that dip right up, and it was great. So now it's like I don't use them as subs as like a sub check. It's just that's it's like a two-way system that just happens to extend down to the bottom, So I don't even look at them as having subs until they turn off because I've been playing too quietly for 20 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing that I think I've only become aware of it recently, and that's whenever you see a documentary on the TV or on Netflix or whatever it is that you're watching, and they show people in the control room, the sound is pumping, it is loud. And
blasting.
You think, nobody works like that. You would last 5 minutes working like that. I know it looks cool for the cameras, but I do think there's a misconception.
That's probably what they're doing.
But there's this misconception that everybody, if you're mixing, it's like, it's a wall of sound hitting you, and it's not like that, is it?
It's not. I mean, I share this space with a few other guys, and I generally leave my door open just because it's like communal and whatever. And I mean, if I'm mixing, I can hear someone just come and say like, so my door's back here, so I can't see somebody walk in, but I can just hear like, hey Jim, and conversation level, it's not a big deal. So I don't want to. I mean, if I'm tracking something and there's a guitar player sitting here, they might want to crank a little bit, but I mean, I'll wear earplugs at that point. I'm not.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not sacrificing stuff just because they want to crank a little bit. So
you'll wear earplugs while tracking guitars if they're right there in the room with you?
If they want to crank the speakers and feel that thing, I'll put earplugs in for sure.
So are you doing like a test recording real quick just to make sure
I'll get
you're
sounds,
getting a good capture?
Yeah, I'll get sounds how I get sounds and everything, like at a reasonable level. And then if they want to perform in the track with the drums feeling like they're standing in front of the drummer and get stupid loud, then I'll put on headphones with nothing, like just don't plug them into anything, or put in earplugs.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's I'm not a good idea.
I'm not making, critical sonic decisions with earplugs in, but I'm, just saving myself from, at that point, timing and, all those kinds of things you can hear them with earplugs. It's no big deal. But yeah, I did when I was working for that other guy, Jim Ward, I did some sessions for him, and we're talking, I've got an Apple Watch that has the SPL thing on it, and 115 dB in the control room.
Wow.
Ear bleedingly loud.
That's stupid loud. Geez.
Yeah, that is earplug territory for sure.
Yeah. So I guess to answer your how loud question, I have this set to notify me at 85 dB, and I rarely get notified during my workday. So
yeah, that's interesting because when I'm mastering, I've got the same. I've got a little dB meter that sits on my desk.
Yeah,
and I aim for about 70 to 75.
Okay.
That's not loud.
Yeah, not at all.
But it's amazing how until I started doing that, it's probably 75 to be honest. Until I started doing that, I was surprised at the level of balance you can hear when you're listening at that level. Yeah. If that makes sense.
There's no, you don't get the Fletcher Munson thing where the bass is extended and, it's just kind of like, everything is.
You take the
way
room
more
out.
Down there. Absolutely.
It's quite surprising.
Yeah. I know a lot of film guys, they, will set their monitor controller to an 85 dB reference tone, and then their monitor controller doesn't exist to them. They do not touch, they don't go up and down, they do not touch it. It does not factor into their workflow, So I've kind of gotten a little bit closer to that, but not, I still want to crank every once in a while and go down like way low every once in a while. So
yeah. I was going to say, actually.
To get the vibe, sometimes you do want to crank it up and bob your head to it, and
Yeah, totally.
Nate and I were talking this morning, like the crankability thing. Like, can you crank it without like wincing at the shrillness of the vocal or the cymbals or the high fizz on the guitar. Like what's hurting you up there, and then can you get away with it? So sometimes you got to go that loud to make sure you're not hurting anybody.
Well, I think everyone, when they're mixing a song, or even when they're producing their own song or tracking their own song, they should crank it at some point just to make sure that there isn't any problems. Because everything might sound balanced when it's really low, but if you crank it, something might stick out.
Yeah, what is that curve? Is it Munson?
Yeah, Fletcher-Munson.
Fletcher-Munson, yeah.
The louder it is, the more low end you perceive, or like the way our hearing functions. Yeah. It's just like, it's like the frequency response of our ears are, the louder something goes, the more low end you hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
But that's where I find headphones really good. If I've mastered it on speakers, you can put headphones on, you can turn it, and it actually almost emphasizes that volume to your ears, if that makes sense. Or I find it does. That could just be me. It's not. I find headphones almost sort of fake that loudness before it becomes loud.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I think that thing tricks a lot of people too, though, because when you crank it, you get that big kind of low end thing, and you're like, oh, this feels great, sounds awesome. Like if it sounds great up, it might not sound great down, but if it sounds great down, it'll sound great all the way up.
Absolutely.
That's kind
totally
of my
agree.
thing. Yeah.
So with your new room and the nice flat frequency response and all of that, how often are you finding yourself putting a pair of headphones on when you're mixing a song?
Never. I mean, I'll check on AirPods sometimes, but it's kind of a bummer, man. I have these great Audeze headphones I got during the pandemic because I was mixing at home and I didn't want to drive my wife crazy. Even though I ended up doing it because they're open back and she could hear everything anyway. I got these and they're fantastic. They really are exceptional. I never got into that world of just being only on headphones. And they physically kind of hurt me. They're very heavy. I think they've gotten way better with the headbands than from what these are. These were like an original version of, these were Ed Cherney, the engineer who passed away a few years ago. I grabbed these on a reverb listing, whatever. So I think they've gotten way better with like the comfort level of them, but I never really locked into them as far as like wearing them for an extended period of time. And headphones have never been a thing for me. I know people who do them. I mean, Dan Millis, is a big headphone guy. Andrew Sheps, like all these guys that do incredible work are headphone people. And I never really got into the workflow.
Well, I mean, it's nice to have speakers that, you've listened to hundreds and thousands of hours of music on,
sure.
But like if you move, house to house or studio to studio, and you got to keep relearning speakers, headphones can be kind of a.
Oh, absolutely. There's a great, great argument for headphones. I just have not gotten into that, thing where it's like, okay, I know these headphones. I know if I put them on, this will happen.
Oh, it's obviously nicer to vibe to actual, speakers.
Oh yeah.
But
headphones don't hit the same as speakers moving air in the room. No, certainly not.
Although open back headphones are nice.
So that's what these are, and they really are great. They're fun to listen to. I mean, they kind of feel like they do the thing that my ATCs do, where it's just like it's really even. It's got the bass isn't hyped. I think that's some people's complaint about ATCs is like, God, the low end's not that big. It's just like no, it's just like super even, man. It goes all the way down. But that mid-range thing where all that detail happens, they have like the Audeze have those as well. That thing where it's like you can hear all this really intricate mid-range detail stuff. I know that's like a total buzzword of what speaker stuff, but it's true. When I first put them on, I was like, oh man, I can hear the pick on the string of the guitar. It's really crazy.
That's wild.
So, yeah.
Now it's been quite a few years since I've mixed, but I know that. There was a lot of talk about mixing in mono, and I like to mix in mono. How often do you how much of the mixing process do you do in mono?
Mixing
do you do any of it mono?
Yeah, no, almost never as far as mixing goes. The one thing I'll do if I'm tracking something, if I'm producing something, and I'm getting sounds on things that are multi-mic'd, then I will do that in mono. So if I got a drum kit going and I'm getting drum sounds, I'll be in mono the whole time. So that way if I flip my overhead from my snare and just like flip the overhead from each other, I can really super tell that things are canceling and I can get really tight that way. Other than that, I haven't worried about mono in a long time. I mean, I don't really know where something would get played back that would cause an issue that people would be worried about from the mixes I've delivered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is mono compatibility that much of a concern these days?
I honestly don't know. No one has ever said like, "Hey, it sounds really cool," but when I put it into mono, the thing like no one's ever said. You know what I mean? And I don't really do a lot of. I feel like I'm a very like symmetrical mixer. I really like a lot of balance and things. So I like if there's something that's only on the left, I like to balance it with something that's only on the right. So like I'm not doing like psychoacoustic tricks to get width or to get these kind of things. So that would cause some like more weirdness in mono. You know what I mean? I feel like, you know, if it's doubled guitars, they're going to be EQ'd maybe slightly differently, so they're wider, but they're still going to be there when you collapse down. You know, it's not like
they're not going to cancel
away.
Each other out.
Yeah. I don't want to do anything like that. I wouldn't want to do that anyway. Like there may be the occasional weird sound effect moment in something that people want really bizarre, and I'm like, all right, well, let's put a phase thing on it so that it's really like way outside the speakers, but then you don't get that at all in the mono, you know. Yeah. But that's like a once in a while, very special moment. It's not the kick drum, you know, or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah. Do you get many people coming to you asking for Dolby Atmos and that sort of thing? Is that a thing that it's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's such a buzzword, and I've never had anyone talk to me about it.
I had the manager of a band, so not even the producer of the project. The manager said, "Hey, is this something we need to worry about?" And I responded with, "Hey, is this something you need to worry about?" Like I don't know. Do you need that? You know, do you guys need a deliverable of that? And they said no. I said okay. And they were on a small. I mean. They were on a label. It's like it's not a major, but it's like a large indie. And I said, ask the label if they require something, and we will figure out what we need to do. And they said we're good. So that was it. Yeah,
it's such a buzzword. You see it, everybody talking about it, and I don't know anyone who's actually working in it.
I feel like it's calmed down a little bit.
I mean,
not hearing much of it.
I think the people who are doing it, and they're. I mean, I'm out of it, so I don't know. But what it seems to me is that the demand is coming from the labels and the technology being available rather than the consumer wanting an additional playback medium that is more immersive. I don't know. I've talked to people that have no idea about what it is I do, like really. And I said, you ever check on like, you know, spatial audio or Apple, whatever? And they're like, what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about.
I've got to be honest, that whole spatial audio that you get. So I got for Christmas, I actually got some of the Bose noise cancelling, really nice headphones because I travel quite a lot and they're really comfy and they're great. And it says immersive audio. That's it. It's like turn on immersive. So you can have it where when you turn your head.
Oh, yeah, the head tracking thing?
The head
tracks.
Why do I want to listen to a song that when I turn my head, it's not where I'm looking? I don't even understand why anyone would want that.
So that you're in the studio, man. You know, you're sitting in front of the speakers, and
but I'm not. I'm on a train.
I understand. Trust me. That's the first. Whenever I connected my AirPods, the first thing I did was just turn off head tracking on whatever I could. You know, just a
weird
because
thing.
when you're listening to a song and you turn your head, you want to hear all the kick drum.
Not even that. It's whatever was here is now. You know, only in the right. It's just
right.
Yeah.
Wait, is that an Apple thing or is
so Apple do it on all the AirPods and Bose do it on all their stuff.
Android does it with their Pixel lineup of earbuds and stuff.
Okay.
My Apple TV does it. I mean, I've done that. Like my wife's taking a nap or reading a book or whatever, and I'm watching something and I have my AirPods in, and it'll do head tracking there. That makes my brain feel a little bit better because I have a visual of where I'm looking and turning. But the music thing is bizarre. Yeah. And I'm sure that if I went and sat in an Atmos room and listened to Rocket Man or whatever that they've done to present people, it would be incredible, and I would love it. But who's getting that opportunity? And like I have not heard a spatial mix in AirPods that sounded better to me than a good stereo mix.
I agree with that as well.
And I haven't I just haven't dug into it enough because no one is asking me for it. And I could be in the minority, but I don't know that I am. You know, I could be. I'm not trying to. You know, I'm not trying to be a Luddite. Like I'm embracing technology. I just don't know that this is the thing I need to do right now in order to further my business at this moment.
I think it only exists at a certain level of.
Well, I know that all labels are requiring it as a deliverable, and Apple is pushing Atmos delivered files to like edit their version of editorial playlists. You know what I mean? So if you deliver a mix with an Atmos version, it'll get preferential treatment on their playlists. So like that's where I think it's kind of a funny thing. It's because of the entities are creating the demand for this format. You know what I mean? It is the people who made it and the people who invested in it are like pushing this demand rather than a person going, man, I really love my AirPods, but I wish that it was more. I wish I could listen to music in a different way. That's not happening as far as I can tell. You know, people are not out there going, you know, most people I see, if like people are walking around, they're wearing one AirPod. You know, they're not even like they're at work, like they're checking you out at the grocery store, and they got one AirPod in, and that's it. It's just like,
so they're listening in mono then.
Yes, or they're listening in left.
They're listening in left,
right?
Which
like,
is not good for your hearing, by the way.
Yeah. Also, don't listen to the Beatles in one. You know, you get those stereo mixes. You got just
Bass and
Ringo
drums.
singing, or just Ringo singing "Yellow Submarine" to you for 3.5 minutes. You know,
so if you're watching Apple TV and you get that spatial thing, it's head tracking you, and a dog walks behind the camera in the video, and you go to look at it, you can still hear the dog barking, like as if you're like looking at it. But
have you not tried this,
it.
Neil? You need to try this.
Yeah, you need to try it out, man.
But
do you have an Apple?
But you're not looking at it.
Do you have an Apple TV?
I do not. I don't have any Apple products of any sort.
So this is specific to that. But basically, if you put the AirPods in, you will get, if something can be broadcast in surround sound or Atmos, you will receive that. And with the head tracking on, it basically locks the screen to where it is relative to your head. So if the screen is there and your head is there, as you turn, it'll sound like you're still getting information from that. So I mean, it does.
Like you're listening to stereo speakers.
Yeah, you're listening to a fixed speaker. Yeah, you're listening to a fixed point source of sound. So the left is going to be the left. If you turn this way, the left is still going to be relative, to where it was.
You're in a theater or something.
You're in exactly. The speakers are fixed at that point. But you can turn that off and just turn your head, and it'll maintain left. Left will stay in the left, right will stay in the right. Whatever. It is interesting.
Like normal headphones, right?
Normal,
yeah. Watching a movie and being in the room with that on, it is a more interesting experience because you can, it's just like you're moving your head and the speakers.
I could see that really relevant for like gaming.
Yeah, totally.
That would make a lot of sense.
Unless you want to hear somebody sneaking up behind you in like some kind of game, and then you don't want that to,
maybe.
Like,
I don't know.
But I guess
I don't game, but that's where it makes the most sense to me.
Yeah. So that's our.
But not in Jim's world, because he doesn't have to worry about it.
I don't.
No.
And if people, I've thought about it too. And like when this whole thing crept up, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, you got to do it." I'm like, "Okay, what's it going to take?" And I looked into it. I put together like a very modest version of a rig just to like be like, at the bare minimum, I can deliver you something. Even now, I own the Atmos, the Dolby Atmos renderer, the whole thing that I could deliver something. It would just be a binaural headphone version of that. I mean, It would play back. It would do the thing that most people do. It would play back in the medium. It just wouldn't be checked on speakers. And I know that the people who really do this say like, you can't just rely on doing it in headphones. But if someone was like, hey, in order to get this playlist or whatever, we need a Dolby Atmos deliverable, I will figure out a way to get you that file that will be a version of your song that may sound a way. I don't know what that's going to be.
Is there like more than just 2 tracks? Is it like?
Yes.
Is it like 5 tracks?
Atmos is
one for each speaker or something, or?
Yes. No, it's. I think the base standard is 9.1.4.
9.1.
So that's left, center, right, wide left, wide right, rear left, rear right, and then maybe some mids, and then the second number is the ceiling. So, I'm sorry, the second number is the sub, so your low frequency channel, and then the third number is the ceiling, so the height channels. So that would be 9 around subwoofers and then 4 on the ceiling. And that would be like, that's what they call your bed. So that's like your physical outputs go to physical speakers, but then they have, I think, like 128 channels of objects, and you can put those things wherever in the space. So you know how you have a phantom center between your left speaker and your right speaker, you get the center image? Right. Now you have a phantom center between all of those speakers. So you can pinpoint anything anywhere in the room. It's very interesting, but because of that, you have to output a massive file that has all these different things.
And thankfully, nobody's asked me to master that yet, so that
right.
is delightful.
Until very recently, I think, I don't know that there was a way to master them because there was no mix bus on an Atmos system.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. But I think they're figuring that out now. Like, people are doing tricks to do that. And like, there's no mix bus, and you have to deliver relatively very quiet. I think it's negative 18 LUFS max. So your output is considerably quieter than what you would deliver as like an actual master.
I guess if you've got that
really
many
quiet.
channels all at minus 18, they build up.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I guess the other thing is that they guys are figuring out a way to kind of hack it a little bit because it's LUFS. They will do longer intros and outros that are nothing. So that adds into their LUFS value. So they're, you're getting negative
their overall
infinity.
score is lower. Yeah.
Yeah. So
right.
Anyway, I don't know that we should talk too much about Atmos because I really don't know anything about it and do anything.
No, that's all right.
It's interesting though, but
it's very interesting.
Yeah, the interesting part of that answer to me was right at the beginning, which is, does anyone ask you for it? Nope. I just find
I've even I did a thing. I said, hey, I asked like clients who were coming back to me that I've done a lot of stuff with. I was like, do you guys have an interest in Atmos? Is that a thing that you're concerned about? Do you want to discuss maybe getting those deliverables? And everyone's like, what are you talking about? So, cool.
Yeah, don't bother. Move on.
Yeah, nothing.
So,
I'm not. It's nothing.
Yeah,
It's nothing.
but I do know guys who are doing it every mix. Every single thing they do, they are doing an Atmos version, or they're doing the Atmos version and then collapsing it down and making the stereo. That's their stereo version. It's just
I've heard that happens.
Oh, interesting.
Quite often.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always thought I thought the mode of operation was always mix it regularly and then do an Atmos mix. But if you can collapse it down to where you don't really lose elements all that much.
Yeah, that was the move, I think, was that you would do the stereo, get it approved, get it mastered, deliver the stems to an Atmos mixer. The Atmos mixer would then use the master as a reference for the Atmos to make sure that the tone and stuff is kind of the same, and then move it around and then deliver that. But now guys are doing the Atmos version as their primary mix and then using the renderer to collapse down to stereo.
Huh.
Maybe there'll be an AI plug-in or something like
there
that.
There is, I'm sure.
Easy Atmos.
Right. I'm sure it is.
Sure there is.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, okay. So in the interest of time, Jim, let's go back a little bit to the mixing, producing question.
Yep.
And touch a little bit more upon that before we let you go. So when we were talking about that earlier, you're doing mixing, and a lot of times there's some pseudo production decisions that might be made on your part, but maybe they aren't production decisions. So how often do you find yourself being asked to produce a song that you might end up mixing, or being asked to mix a song that might need some production decisions made on it? And they tell you that, like, we have some questions about, how we want this to sound, and maybe you're the person to help us take this to the last, through the last mile kind of thing. Especially with, bedroom producers and recorders, they can only take their equipment so far and their knowledge so far. So they hire you to mix their song, but also they're looking for your experience and expertise in the production world to make sure that the mix really stands up. So what's been your experience with that?
If I'm producing something, I'm almost always mixing that thing. So that's like, if I'm going to be the one actually tracking and doing overdubs and stuff like that, it's almost always I'm mixing it, because typically the people tend to be local and they don't want to, send it out to somebody else. They don't know any other mixers or whatever. And, we kind of deliver things that way. So that's sort of like, I don't know, 50% of my work is doing stuff like that, where it's just like, I got the artist in the room and I can make those decisions. There are times when I get the artist and I get to build the band, which is also pretty great too, because that's a production decision in its own, because like I'm hiring people who I really trust to do the thing that I know they're going to do well. So it's just like that basically erases, many sessions of production decisions by going, hey, I'm going to get this drummer and this bass player, this guitar player, and this keyboard player, and they're all going to make decisions in the moment that are going to be great and appropriate, and we don't even have to worry about it anymore. So it's like, that's always really easy. But if I'm getting something from somebody who is, self-producing, or they're like a band of people that are kind of doing stuff on their own, we'll just have a conversation about what it is that they're looking for. Give me some references of stuff that you guys like. How can we get you closer to that with the stuff you have? Do we need to re-record some stuff? Should I, or if somebody said, hey, we want to hire you for our record that we're going to make in our basement, then maybe I have a conversation with them ahead of time and just say, cool, I'd love to mix it. Maybe we can build in some, fail safes just in case. So if you guys could take clean DIs on your guitars and then do your guitar tones, we can have both. Say something happens, the guitar tones aren't quite working, I have a clean DI of the performance that I can reamp through some of my stuff. Or I kind of talk them through getting drum sound tones, or ask them to take samples at the end of the session so I have really clean drum hits that I can use to replace or augment their drums, and then it doesn't sound like a sample, it sounds like a larger-than-life version of their drum, and it's like, it's pre-production, but I'm not there for it, I'm just trying to help myself later and help them get closer to their thing. So it's just conversations with people and trying to figure out what it is that they want, and what it is I can do with what I have. I tell them all day, it's like, hey, I can get you there, but I'm going to have to do X, Y, and Z. Or I know that I'm going to have to do X, Y, and Z, and they don't need to know that because they'll never hear it, maybe. So we don't have to have that part of the conversation. But I'm like, hey, I'm going to get you the thing that you want. And if I use a drum sample, I use a drum sample, but don't worry about it. It's not a big deal.
It's just a tool.
It's just a tool.
Right.
It is. It's an EQ. It's an EQ and a compressor. Is drum samples. It's like the snare drum that you recorded has too much hi-hat bleed in it, so I have to turn the top end down. But also I need top end, so I'm going to get a snare sample that has top end. And also the version of the drum that you recorded is too short. I want one longer, so this one has a little bit more length to it. It's just like it's just tools to get you the thing that you want.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I don't think aside from the artist who might know that, say, their snare drum was replaced, no one else is going to be like, boy, that sounds like
guys like
Steven
us.
Slate trigger.
Right.
Like, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing too, is like, as much as humanly possible, unless you're in certain genres of music, you don't want people going, oh man, that snare drum sounds the same every single time it's been hit. Or, you don't want people's ears are really, really funny, man. They pick up on pattern so quickly. You can hear if you do a 4-bar, tambo loop that has a little hitch in it, you will hear that hitch every single time anybody's ear picks up on the pattern of that thing. So if you use the same, velocity snare on a indie rock song that is really open and it's just ka ka every time, and it's the same as that, everyone will notice. So you don't want to get picked up by that. You want it to, augment and do the thing that is it's begging for to get the point across without distracting anybody going, man, that snare drum just is driving me nuts,
Totally.
Right.
So, yeah, just don't want to draw attention to it, but you want people to love it and be, moved by it, however that they're supposed to be. If it's a ballad snare and it's got this crazy reverb on it, you want to feel that, but they don't want to be like, man, that's totally a sample from that sound with 1985 reverb on it. Just like, no, it's just it's a drummer in a warehouse. That's how we did it.
Yeah.
But this was the snare drum used on Pet Sounds.
Yeah.
Which was a drummer in a warehouse.
Yeah,
right. Exactly. So, Jim, we have a couple questions that we ask everybody to answer. And the first one is, what DAW are you primarily using, if you're using one or multiple?
I am a Pro Tools guy, and I have been for a long time. Yeah.
Score Pro Tools.
I learned on Pro Tools, and then the first studio I worked at did not use Pro Tools. So I had to learn another DAW, and then was there for a few years. And then the next studio I worked at, I was engineering for the owner of the studio, and he literally took the keyboard and mouse away from me. He's like, dude, you got to get better at this. Because I was just fumbling around trying to do, Nuendo shortcuts in Pro Tools, and it was bad. So I dedicated. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna be the fastest guy here in Pro Tools, and I'm gonna learn all this stuff, and I'm gonna be quick. And that's what I did. So yeah, Pro Tools.
Nice.
Use whatever, but yeah, Pro Tools because I'm the quickest and most comfortable in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And then a desert island plugin. What is one plugin that you cannot live without? And if you had to save it from a burning building, what would it be?
You know what it is? It's Fabfilter Pro Q. Because that's what it is. It's just
Have
what
you
it is.
upgraded to 4?
Of course.
The day it came out.
The morning I'm brushing my teeth at 7 in the morning. I'm like, I got the email. I just upgraded. Yeah,
Yeah.
like of course I did immediately.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's so
Yeah,
good.
it's really fantastic.
And it's just it can do nothing and everything, and it's just like it just does the thing. It's
the new bit, they've always done.
soothish.
Yeah,
It's really
in
good.
mastering. Oh my man, that is my new favorite tool.
I found it's better in some ways than Soothe, which is kind of blowing my mind because Soothe is fantastic.
It's great,
but can be a little finicky at times because it almost has too many
I was listening
adjustments.
to a podcast, and there's a mixer named Matt Huber, and he was talking about Soothe, and he's like, it's great if you can like just narrow, like just focus in only on the little range that you want to do. And I started doing that, and it got better. But then Fabfilter is just that pretty much. You just engage a band and then do the thing.
Yeah.
And you can like really like make those make your cue really be like a block of just this little block of stuff is getting too harsh, and just duck out that. It's
So
just
clever.
great. I mean, if you wanted to, you could set the whole thing to be dynamic and just have a compressor. You could have an upward expand. You can just it can do everything but reverb and delays. And now that you can saturate with it too. Now it's got that the warmth and all that stuff. It's just
transformer circuit built
it's
into
like
it.
it's like the least, I don't know, it's the most utility thing ever, but it does everything. It's great.
Amazing how often that comes up as the
I
one
figured
plugin.
every mixing video I've ever watched in my life, in the past since Pro Q came out, people are using Pro Q in some way. So it's just ubiquitous. It's great.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Jim, thank you for spending some time with us today talking about this.
Yeah, man, no problem.
If anyone wanted to engage with you on producing a song or mixing a song, how could they find you?
Instagram is probably where I'm most active. It's just Jim Stewart Rec, REC. All one, no spaces or anything. And then my website is jimstewartmixing.com. And
Great.
Send me an email.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
All right.
Awesome.
I've loved this. And we're going to make sure that we leave in the fact Nate left out anything about you at the start. That's staying in the episode. No editing that out, Nate.
Would you guys, I mean, hey, do you have anything else you want to talk about for like 5 minutes other than the Atmos stuff? I feel like we went long on Atmos and I don't know shit about it. So do you guys want do you want to pad it with anything else? Because
I got a question.
Yeah.
So
All right,
you
go
said
for it,
you had a first band. What was the name? We should go around the room.
Oh, man.
What was the name of your first band?
Your Finest Hour.
Yes.
Oh, it's nice. Yeah, nothing cliched about that for a band.
Nope, never.
That is like
There was probably three other
upon
bands.
emo.
Totally. There was probably 3 other bands in Cleveland with that same name. We didn't care, just whatever.
That's a good question, though. Go on then, Neil. What was your first band? I mean, you play live a lot, right? So bands are your thing.
The first band I ever played actually out with when I was like, I don't know, 15, 16 was a band. We were called Purgatory. Such a terrible name. We weren't even a metal band. We were like a grunge, like sort of like garage band. We covered like Nirvana type stuff. So yeah, but the first band I ever kind of put together that we played in a garage was called Pincushion, which
Also not a metal band?
no, that one. No,
Man.
no.
Oh, that sounds like a metal
you
band.
got a lot of metalhead names for non-metal bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the first
was it
metal
like
band
Yacht
I
Rock
was
or
in
something like that?
Yacht
No.
Rock.
Yeah.
Yacht Rock. The first metal band I was in, we were called Merde, which is
French
for shit.
Shit?
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
That goes down well on posters.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
actually like, so the venue called us and was like, hey, we want to put your band name on the marquee out so that all of the highway could see it, so that it would draw people in. What's your band name? And we didn't have a band name at the time, so we were like, what could we wanted to say, F this and all that, as our band name. That would be so much fun to see some curse words. We're like, well,
Yeah, that ain't gonna work.
no. So we hit it in a different language.
Nice.
Nice.
So that's like naming your band Free Beer, and they put it on the marquee, just
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Always good.
Yeah. Nate, what was your first band?
My first band, I was in high school. I want to say like sophomore. The name was Daikanashi.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm trying to spell that, let alone pronounce
it's
that.
Japanese.
Yeah, God bless you.
Yeah.
One of the people in our band was really into Japanese like anime and that culture, and and I think spent some time in Japan. So she came up with it, and the rest of us were like, yeah, okay, that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ben?
Yeah, my the band I spent most time in, because when you're at school, you're in and out of bands like this too.
Yeah.
We were called Dancing for Dollars. We basically played. If you were paying, we were playing. Bar mitzvahs,
Nice.
weddings.
Yeah.
New Year's Eve was always the great one. We did
Nice.
4-hour set on New Year's Eve.
All right. It's awesome.
But we were. Yeah, there was no dancing and there was very little dollars.
A
But
few dollars.
So no one was throwing dollars up on
No.
stage.
No.
it was a good.
4-hour sets. Those are
4-hour sets on New Year's Eve as a
That's
drummer.
brutal.
Got to
4
the
hour
end of
sets
Yes.
are brutal. Yes, I do them all the time. 4-hour sets are brutal.
Yeah, I was
No,
like,
thank
prefer
done
3.
now. Yeah,
No, I think that's one of the reasons why I stopped doing the whole band thing. Is just playing sets is exhausting, and driving across town is
Schlepping.
exhausting.
yeah.
Schlepping, yeah.
Schlepping.
Like I'm done carrying my amp up a narrow set of stairs to a club on a second level.
Oh,
like,
man.
screw that.
Are you
man.
moaning
You mean-
about carrying an amp to a
Amp.
drummer?
I carry
Yes.
an entire
Shush, man.
PA system.
Nate, did you ever-
2 speakers, 2 subs, 2.
Yeah.
Nate, did you ever play the Pit, Cleveland?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the 3rd floor walk up
Yes.
with a, it was an 8x10 cab, a full drum kit,
Yep.
this is the stupidest
Yep.
thing. Or you
That
play,
was my first experience playing music in Cleveland. I hadn't lived in Cleveland at that point.
that's where we
And
met,
I
by the
was-
way. Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah.
We talked about that. Yeah. And that's funny because Jim and I met. This would have been
Almost 20 years ago?
2000. Well, so I was in college and I graduated. I left Bowling Green in 2005. So this would have been at least like 2003, 2004,
Yeah,
Wow.
2004 sounds
somewhere
right.
around there. 2004.
Yeah, because I graduated high school in 2003, and then the band that I met you in was like the following year. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that was my first time playing music in Cleveland. And then I went to a couple shows at the Grog Shop. And then my wife, my now wife is from Cleveland. So when I said, okay, I'll move to Cleveland, the only place I knew was the East Side over by the Grog Shop. And that's how I ended up here.
where you are,
Not
yeah.
that anybody asked, but that's how I ended up in Cleveland.
I think we also had a show. I'm not sure if you were managing a band or doing something with a band, like some band from Toledo area. And,
Oh yeah, Drama Summer.
Yes, and we traded a show, and we were playing down in Dayton. And on the way to the show, they got into a bad car accident, and the drummer broke his
They
back.
did.
Oof.
Yes.
And
That was a terrible day.
yeah.
And I still remember that day like it was yesterday. It's so wild remembering that.
None of this has to be podcast stuff, but yeah, it was very weird.
I don't know.
And then we played the show, and we didn't realize it was at like a Christian coffee house, which is not like our vibe at all as far as like the level of that we were putting out. And it was just like, it was a weird day. They were praying about the kid who got into a car accident, and we ended up going to the hospital afterwards to like see the guy. It was a weird day.
Yeah, I'm still friends with him on Facebook,
Okay.
and I see him posting every now and again. I just remember being stuck on 75 in a traffic jam,
Yes.
and then getting out and walking, I don't know, a quarter of a mile up the highway, kind of over the crest, so I could see what the blockage was. And I saw a mangled up Jeep with a Marshall cab in the back,
Yeah.
and I knew exactly who that was.
All right. Yeah.
And I sprinted
Rough day.
back to the car, and just mayhem ensued beyond at that point. Freaking wild.
Sorry to end it on a downer.
Welcome to 2025,
No,
everybody.
yeah, right.
That's all right.
Right.
That's all right. I think we'll keep some of this in the podcast.
Yeah,
I'll do some
just-
judicious editing.
Well, yeah, chop
But,
it out. I don't care.
Yeah. But no, this was good, man. Thank you very much,
Yeah, no
Jim.
problem.
Yeah.
for
Really
having me, guys.
appreciate your time.
Sure.
And yeah, we'll talk to you all soon.
Sounds
Brilliant. Thanks, Jim. Really appreciate
All
it.
right.
No problem,
Cheers,
guys.
gents.
Thanks, Jim.
good. Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Sound Discussion. Your hosts are Ben Holmes, Neil Merchant, and me, Nate Kelms. Our theme song is composed and recorded by Jojo Timmerman. You can find us on the internet at sounddiscussionpodcast.com, or you can drop us a line at sounddiscussionpodcast@gmail.com. Additional show notes for this episode can be found on our website or in the description area of your podcast player. A big thank you to our guest for taking the time to chat with us today, and to you, the listener, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be part of our discussion. We look forward to having you join us again next month on another episode of Sound Discussion.
And he literally took the keyboard and mouse away from me. He's like, dude, you got to get better at this.